can't tell by my accent, was born in the United States. But I have a bit of a mixed ethnicity, I guess you could say. And on my mother's side, there is Welsh and Irish, and then my father's Italian. So later in life, I moved to Italy, and I lived there for a while. And then life circumstances sent me to France, where I lived there. Um, got to know the French people, French culture, French language pretty well, although I admit I'm forgetting some of my French. Um, then I did some traveling around Europe, just in my, mid 20s, late 20s, mid 20s, I suppose. And then I ended up in Spain, where I've been for the past 6 years. And so I think I have a interesting American perspective from having grown up there, and a bit of a European perspective of various European nations. I consider myself a European nationalist first and foremost. That's my main concern, and in a sense, I even would say that I am a European tribalist. I'm not always even so much in favor of European nation states or the current version of the countries that occupy Europe. In some cases, I'm actually quite in favor of certain independence movements or things like that. And I started a YouTube channel, I think in 2018 it was. Made a lot of videos, then didn't make a lot of videos because some things in my life happened. I just wasn't able to and didn't feel much desire or justification to. I felt like it was just not a good time for me to be talking about anything really. And then around 2020, with the pandemic, quote unquote, and the George Floyd riots, I decided to start making some more videos, which led me to making a Telegram channel, which I really enjoy. I enjoy being on Telegram. I'm quite active there. So yeah.
What I've been working on of late is that I have been writing a short story, and maybe is not quite so short, but I've finished writing that. I'm now working on recording that, and I'm actually working with someone to do some artwork for the story. So I hope I'll have that out sometime next month in September. So keep an eye out for that. I haven't just been lazy, and I'm not. It's not that I'm working on nothing. It's that I'm trying to work on something big. But I will actually probably release another similar video to my one on St. Petersburg within the next couple of days. And then if you'd like to, also wanted to mention, if you'd like to donate to the stream, I've enabled Entropy in the chat, so you can find the link down there. So what we were going to talk about today was about a few of the things that you spoke about recently on some of your streams. So I saw the one that you did a week or two ago, and then one from a couple months ago. And so it was on several different events that happened in Europe in this summer. I don't follow news from continental Europe so closely. So your channel was the only one that I actually heard about this from. Yours, and I've also heard about it from Paul Joseph Watson. But it wasn't really something that I had heard that much about or read that much about. And I listened to the streams, and I found them interesting. And I don't think you said anything that I really disagree with. I agreed with them for the most part. But then the one thing I thought of was that it does kind of remind me of a lot of the news stories that were making the rounds in the dissident right back in 2016, 2017, 2018. Mm-hmm. So I guess for anyone who doesn't know, what were the things that you spoke about? You spoke about something that happened in Paris and then in Italy.
Yeah. So the last two streams I made. So the first stream that you're referring to, I made I believe it was in June, and it was right around the time of the Champions League final. So I believe that took place in June, late May or early June. And for those of your listeners who might not know, the Champions League final is this really important European soccer or football match that takes place between like the two best teams in all of Europe. And in a year where there might not be a World Cup or a European Cup, this is considered like the crown jewel of the European football calendar. And so the world's eye was fixed on it. And this final match takes place in various European countries. Every year, the site of the final changes. So it's like 1 year it might be in Madrid, the next year it might be in Rome, and this year it was held in Paris. And the teams that played were Liverpool and Madrid, Real Madrid. And then it was held in Paris. So you have the French are involved by being the host nation. The English are involved, English fans, because an English team is playing, and Spanish fans. Spaniards are involved as well. And what happened in the build up to the match and in the aftermath of the match was that the final was held in the Stade Saint-Denis and in the Saint-Denis banlieue of Paris. And anyone who might be familiar with banlieues or European cities knows that for the most part, the riffraff, those who don't have our best interests at heart live in these areas. Those who like
diversity. They're the most diverse areas.
Exactly. As Southern Nordic calls them, wildlife. The wildlife lives here. And so the wildlife fully organized mass attacks of the Spanish and English fans and neutral French fans, whatever, who were entering the stadium and had to walk without police protection through these dangerous no-go zones. Like, this is a genuine no-go zone now, this part of Paris. There had even been warnings about, like, why is UEFA, the organizing body of European football, holding the tournament in the Stade Saint-Denis, in the Saint-Denis banlieue of Paris? Like, that's the worst place you could hold the final. And I want to pick my words carefully because I don't want your stream to get in trouble, but the violence that was wrought upon the European fans by these populations of Maghrebi or African, quote unquote, new French were really despicable. Like, really, some of the accounts that I read, it was like something out of a zombie apocalypse novel. It was like something out of an urban warfare scenario. Fans were coming together and like huddling together in almost like military battalions, using tables and chairs as shields because they were being assaulted on all sides. Women and young children, girls, were being attacked in all sorts of ways that are horrendous. And then in the aftermath, the French government tried to blame it all on the English fans. And there was also this attempt to just completely sweep it under the rug and ignore it, but it couldn't be ignored because it's such a big event. It'd be like trying to ignore, like, I guess, like a terrorist attack at the Super Bowl. And so then the French government did all of this shady propaganda, Ministry of Propaganda stuff to make it seem like it was the Liverpool fans that caused all this violence. They're the ones to blame. They tried to break into the stadium without tickets, et cetera, et cetera. And so I made this stream after having sort of harvested a bunch of video evidence, and I scoured French Twitter, Spanish Twitter, British Twitter to get a lot of different, firsthand accounts and cell phone camera videos and things like that, because there was this concerted attempt by the mainstream media and the French government to either minimize or completely sweep under the rug, ignore what had happened, or worse, in my opinion, blame the innocent white fans, European fans from Liverpool, from Madrid, etc., like, and their families, their children, like, they're the ones being blamed for this. So I made a stream about that, just to document what was going on. And as you said, I think even people in the dissident right might have missed it a little bit because, maybe not all of us care about sport so much, so we're not paying attention to that. But I felt like
it went way over my head. I remember on Telegram you said something like, after what happened in Paris last night, and I commented, what happened in Paris, because I hadn't heard anything about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, right, like, there are sports that I'm not interested in, and if a big final or championship match is happening, like, I'm not going to know about it. And I think in this case, many people in the online right just aren't that interested in sport, perhaps, and so they didn't realize that this travesty had happened. And I think, it plays into what we're talking about today. I understand that this is nothing new. We all know these things happen. They've been happening for, I would say decades now. Um, the the severity has increased perhaps, but the fact that these things happen has been happening for a while. And so, it wasn't like I was um, breaking news about the behavior of these people who have come into our countries. We all know. But I just felt like, because especially the government and the media were trying to minimize or even blame um, those who were innocent and did nothing wrong at all. They just wanted to watch football with their families. I felt like I should say something.
Mm-hmm.
And then I took a break from streaming for a while. Making videos, which I kind of tend to do from time to time, until I saw something else that was also related to football in a way. There was an incident of violence in Italy. In this case, though, the roles were reversed. An Italian man killed this African living in Italy. And because the roles were reversed now, it was totally okay, indeed encouraged, for the mainstream media and leftoid politicians and um, you know public figures, celebrities, all the kind of people, progressive types, to take advantage of that and decry how racist Italians are and Italian society. And in particular, there was this footballer who's the captain of AC Milan, an important Italian club, a very big, kind of like, I guess, what would you say, like the New York Giants of Italian football. And he's the team captain. And he made this long, effusive marathon post on Instagram about how disappointed and shocked and disgusted he was. And he felt so sorry for this poor African. And then he also blamed all of Italian society. All Italians had blood on their hands. And I just felt like that was so hypocritical and masochistic, because people like Davide Calabria and the mainstream and the political mainstream never have anything to say. They never write anything so effusive when there's all sorts of cases of these migrants who come to Italy as quote unquote refugees and show their gratitude to the Italians who have supposedly rescued them by doing all sorts of terrible things, sexual things, or worse. For example, the case of Pamela Mastro Pietro, who was an 18-year-old girl, and she was kidnapped, struggle sessioned, and then literally butchered, and her body parts were put in a suitcase and dumped into a river by 3 Nigerians. And Davide Calabria never had anything to say about that. Her name never became a hashtag. There were never any, artist depictions of her going viral on social media. And I just felt like I'd make a stream about that, because this is also not anything new. Just today, it's just on my Telegram, I published, there was another instance of a quote unquote asylum seeker in the city of Piacenza, in plain view, like in the street, in the town center, sexually, forcibly assaulting a woman. And I know that people can get burnt out talking about this, but I don't, I guess. And I feel like, if nothing else, I just want to document all of these cases, because when then some left-wing or NPC Italian or whatever, from whatever nationality, comes on the scene and says, "Oh, we're so horrible, and we all have the blood on our hands because of what happened here." Well, then do all Nigerians have the blood on their hands for what they did to Pamela? Do all African asylum seekers, quote unquote, have any collective guilt for what they've done to that woman in Piacenza? Like, this is so hypocritical and so masochistic and so evil. It's such an injustice. And also, it's just completely degrading the life of Europeans everywhere. It's not right. I really don't like this injustice. So, but I do go lengthy spells without talking about any of this stuff. I mean, it happens every day, because I do feel like, yeah, I'm preaching to the choir. We all know this is happening. I don't want to black pill I don't even want to use that term. I don't want to demoralize people. So even like at the beginning of my channel, I always tried to put a positive message in my video, make suggestions, end on a positive note. But sometimes it's not easy to do that. It's just really bad, you know. And I don't want people to be demoralized when they watch my stuff or read my stuff. And so sometimes it's like, well, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. So I
Yeah.
literally just keep my mouth shut.
So, I mean, I don't really like I said earlier, I don't really disagree with anything you said. But I'd say my issue is that, you know what, I remember back in 2015, 2016, when there was the big things like the Bataclan attack in Paris and the Cologne sexual assaults in New Year's Eve 2016. And both of these were kind of like watershed moments for me. They were shocking. This was kind of when I was already in the territory of maybe like watching something made by Sargon of Akkad, and I was really like getting fed up with the shit libs, and I was really getting annoyed with all of the people running cover for Islam. And back then, I was more focused on Muslims than I am now. But all the media I was consuming was like pro-refugee stuff. It was all talking about like how Donald Trump is a racist because he was on the campaign trail at the time. At my university, we had they were talking about refugees in the lectures and stuff like that, and how bigoted all these right wingers were who were opposed to it in Europe. And then when the Cologne thing happened, it kind of was like shocking for me because this was something that, according to the media, the only media I really had available, save for maybe a couple of centrist Civnat YouTubers, all the media was saying this wasn't possible. And then here it was, like right in front of you. And that one was like, for me, was shocking. I think that probably the Cologne one was the most shocking because like with the terrorist attacks, they can always write that off as something that was done by an individual, that like, one Muslim blows himself up, but well, most Muslims don't blow themselves up to kill people. So, and then, not to get into the whole, like how many of them sympathize with it, that's been done before. But I think with the Cologne one, what that really drove home for me was that you can't simply write that off as like a select few bad ones, because that was like 2,000 of them or something, like working in tandem together. But then like with the news stories that you spoke about recently, so this one with about Paris, the various murders you talked about in Italy, and also I heard about this other like from a few months earlier was this kind of what was it, some festival of some kind in Italy that had a similar thing.
Yeah, that was the La Festa della Repubblica. It's a national holiday, and in various parts of Italy, in particular a place called Peschiera, the new Italians, the invaders, they just totally chimped out and did all sorts of horrible things, vandalism, other annoyances, grotesque things. But they also in one particular instance, about 30 of them, so again, like grand numbers, like in Cologne, lots of them, 30 of these people surrounded and groped, racially abused, and otherwise abused 6 minors, 6 young girls at a train station. And that was just another example. And they were shouting, "This is Africa." It's like we're at war and they're conquering land and they're proud of it, and they conquer it in the name of all of Africa, which I also think is interesting. But I won't get into that.
And my question is like, how do people on the dissident right who are red pilled, who probably know about all the issues that we're discussing here, or they've already heard about all these attacks, they probably agree with us on all of these issues. How does someone deal with it? Because I did kind of feel a bit like less of the like visceral reaction that I did to something like Cologne 5 or 6 years ago, because I guess like first of all, I mean, for one reason is I am a bit more removed from it now. I'm currently living in the Russian Federation, so I'm not really in contact with like much diversity anymore, and I don't like really interact with shit libs in my day-to-day life or anything like that. But it's still something that you see on the news. But also, I guess I've kind of gotten to the point where I just feel like I don't really expect anything else. I expect this to happen, and I expect it to continue to happen. And until like there's actually until there's actually like a fundamental change in the attitudes of the elites. Well, it's going to continue to happen because their ideology necessitates that this will happen. It's inevitable. And, I feel like we shouldn't be, well, I mean, of course, these are outrages. Like, we shouldn't be always like despairing over this. Like, I find like there's something really unhealthy about kind of like running over all of the different atrocities that are committed in Europe. And, of course, it's outrageous. And Europe and America, North America as well, across the white world, really. And it's something that I really understand why people would be outraged over it, rightfully so. But I also feel like, a lot of us kind of need to take a different attitude where, we understand that this is the reality of the situation we're in. We can't change it at the moment. And I think we have to be very tactful about it. I guess the analogy I would use is, say that you're like an officer in a war or something like that, and you see a bunch of your men and maybe friends getting killed and blown to pieces and stuff like that. Of course, that's something that would be traumatic for you, but you still have like a job to do. If an officer is like outraged about this person being killed, he's not going to make the best decisions in the battlefield, and it's going to mess with his mental health when he really needs to be in a sane state of mind to be able to be able, in his case, to continue to fight the war. And I say that our guys really need to be able to be in a sane state of mind to be able to survive Clown World. I titled the stream "Avoiding Apathy and Despair in Clown World" because, on the one hand, I think that like all these crimes that are being committed against our people are outrageous, but then like I think like dwelling on it too much will cause despair. But on the other hand, you don't want to get to the point where you just kind of accept that as something that is just the reality of the world, because then it becomes like a lot less. It becomes a lot. You internalize that as a lot less of an outrage, because like I said, with something like Cologne from several years ago, that was something that was shocking for me. It's not really shocking for me anymore. Whether that's bad or not, whether I've just become more hardened to it, or whether I have less interest in it, I still feel like I care about it. It's really a hard thing. It's really a hard dilemma to cope with. So how would you say is the best way to go about it?
Oh, well, there's so much I could say in response. Let me first just say that your experience is similar to mine, in that the events in Paris and Bataclan, and then shortly after in Cologne, were also watershed moments for me. I've said in many videos and other conversations with other people who've invited me out to their streams and in shows, etc., that for me, those Paris attacks were like my 9/11, because I was just a small boy when 9/11 happened. Didn't really quite understand the full gravity of that moment. And then also, I've never really been too attached to America. Obviously, I mean, I left it the moment I could. And then, but then like with France, I lived there. Paris was a city that I'd been to many times. I had many French friends that I'd made during my time there. And so that really did affect me. So yeah, I was also, I was already sort of in the waters of Paul Joseph Watson videos and things like that. But after those events, it was like, all right, this is going way too far. And that's even like what encouraged me to make my own channel. Okay, in response to other things you said, there was so much, and I feel where you're coming from. I would say I really love that analogy of the military officer as well, and I've actually thought that myself. I don't want to, say in any way that I'm an important online presence or figure or whatever. I have a very humble YouTube channel. I have a very humble Telegram channel. Telegram is like a sort of obscure alternate platform anyway, so it's like, even if you get big on Telegram, is that much? It's like being the biggest team in the second division or something. But I do think that I have a responsibility, at least to the people who follow me and read what I put up or watch what I put up. I have a responsibility not to demoralize them, just as a military officer has the responsibility not to demoralize his soldiers. And the officer may be well aware of things that the average soldier has no idea of. The officer might be aware of impending doom, but he can't demoralize his soldiers, and he can't maybe even let them know that. He has to say, no, actually, the odds are in our favor. Let's let's go get him. So I do keep that in mind, and that's why I feel that sort of that it's walking a fine line. Should I talk about what happened in Sweden? Okay, someone else is doing it. Okay, all right, that's fine. Should I talk about this thing that happened in France? Okay. Sometimes for me, it's just that I feel like in one sense I want to address whatever happens because I want to remember their names. I want to remember these moments, because I think that, well, like for example, I want to remember the name Pamela Mastropietro. I want to remember the name Canon Hinand. They scream at us the name George Floyd, or in this case, that happened in Italy. They tried to make the African that was killed in Italy into the new like Saint George, and they tried to make his name go viral and everything. And I don't want to have their names in my head. I want to remember the names of our innocent victims who were doing nothing wrong except living as white people in their own countries. And so that's one reason why I'll sometimes still, dive into this dark world. And then in other cases, I think it has to do with your disposition. Like some people might feel burnt out, demoralized, or even bored. Like I've seen some of the comments in the chat saying, like it's too late. We've lost. Just get over it. And I can't argue with that. However, I don't want to become apathetic. I don't want to. That's not in my disposition. So, and I say this as someone who's actually always been a bit of a melancholic disposition, always maybe even a bit depressive, I guess, and I've had to work on that. But in these cases, like sometimes I just embrace the Kali Yuga. I embrace this struggle, and I don't want to forget the injustices. They actually motivate me. It's kind of like a weird thing, I guess, where I kind of embrace the darkness and it motivates me. So I guess attitude towards this time in our lives has something to do with it. So yeah, I would say like remembering the names, remembering the injustices. That's one reason that I still care about this. And also I don't want to get apathetic. I don't accept that this is part and parcel of our lives now. The reality might be that it is, but I don't want to accept that. And I still want to raise, all I can do is from my little platforms, raise my objections and say, no, this is not right. This should not have happened. European lives matter. European lives maybe even matter more than the lives of these con artists who are coming over in the guise of refugees and then repaying us with violence and horrible acts. I don't want to become apathetic to that.
Yeah.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing you said earlier about like the Bataclan kind of being your 9/11. For me, I think the reason that the Cologne thing was like such a watershed moment is I was a young child and during 9/11, 6 years old at the time, so not really old enough to understand it. But even then, like I'd say that the reason that 9/11 for me wasn't as shocking is that it seemed like, now I don't want to get into all the like conspiracies. I mean,
right. I could even say Bataclan probably had some conspiratorial nonsense behind it as well. I don't think it was just an organic event.
It could have. I don't want to get into like the 9/11 conspiracies. I do believe that, I'm not saying I believe the official narrative of 9/11, but I want to just go on based on the narrative that was presented to us. It seemed like an attack from the outside against us, and that the response was that we must defend ourselves. So, I mean, it's amazing when you think of it. This was just over 20 years ago, but the United States actually came together as a country after 9/11. Now, I think that did lead to a lot of foolish decisions. I'm not saying I supported any of the wars or actions taken after 9/11. I think a lot, and I don't want to have to get into, which groups benefited from that, which country in the Middle East had the most to gain. That's not the point. At least like the society as a whole was able to actually come together and then say, we're Americans and we must defend ourselves, and we are this free country, and the stuff. Anyone who was around back then, even as a young boy, I understood this. It actually seemed like they wanted to legitimately defend the country, even though we knew that wasn't true. Whereas it didn't come across as like being attacked by your own government. It came across as like an attack from the outside, even though, again, this is just the official narrative. With something like Cologne, it came across as not only was it an attack against the German people, but that the German government, the media, the entire intelligentsia was complicit in that attack, in that they deliberately tried to like hide it. They weren't being honest with it, and they seemed a lot more concerned about the reaction to this from their own people than actually solving the problem. It was the same with Rotherham. But that's something I didn't even hear about Rotherham until 2017 or so, 2017, 2018. That was the first time I had even heard about it, because it was never even reported in North America. Nobody in Canada ever heard about Rotherham, even though that was revealed, I think, in 2012. So yeah, these were watershed moments, because it was when it made me realize not only is there this threat, but the governments that represent the peoples of the Western world, or claim to at least, these are hostile forces. And then, over the course of 2016, 2017, up until 2018, I kind of began to internalize that, the biggest threat is in fact the regime that is ruling the West. It's not Islam. It's not something in the Middle East. And the migrants are basically like a tool of they're not something they are coming from the outside geographically, but they aren't an attack from the outside as much as they're a weapon of the Western establishment against people of European descent across the world.
A rabbi said, there's a video of a rabbi who describes them as the broom that is used to sweep up Europe.
Wow. Yeah, well, that's pretty on the nose, but we got to.
I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, we got to be careful about what we say on YouTube. But yes, that's when I kind of realized that it wasn't just incompetence; it was malice on the part of the people who control the Western world, and then how complicit all the institutions were in it. But I think that I kind of did go through in 2018 or so, kind of this cycle of you're a normie, you're in denial, you say you're against racism, you say that then when you start to see some of these things, you'll say, oh, it's just culture, it has nothing to do with race, and then you kind of go through that, and then when you realize, well, actually that kind of has something to do with it, I find that you either go through this anger phase, or this and then a kind of a despair phase. And I definitely went through that, I'd say 2017, 2018. I deleted a few of the videos I made in my first year, because I think they came across as kind of just like some angry guy yelling about what's going on. And not that I think I was wrong. It's just I didn't really like the way that I presented that, because it didn't look good on me. But I think that after that, you kind of have to get into a phase where you've accepted the situation. Doesn't mean that you're accepting it as in it's always going to be like this, but you've understood that that's the way it is, and that you have to learn to operate under that kind of system. Doesn't mean that the injustices being inflicted against you aren't something that need to be avenged in the future, peacefully and legally, I'll add. But as in within the law, as in the people that are responsible should be put in, I believe should be put in court someday and face charges for their crimes against our people. And I hope that day comes. But then you have to realize that that's not going to happen right away, and you have to get yourself in a mindset where you can see these things happening and still understand where that they are a major injustice, but it's not something that allows it's not something that allows them to break your spirit. You have to maintain a healthy spirit, because knowing that all this stuff is happening, you still have to live your life. And we're not going to save the West with if everybody's depressed and blackpilled and
exactly.
Just going off about I'm not saying this about you, but if somebody's always talking about oh, it's over, this video, that this new cell phone video or TikTok video or whatever, if we're all just kind of trapped in this outrage cycle, I don't think we're going to win. But I will add that I do see a lot of value in documenting the various things. And I did, that's why I really enjoyed the streams that you did, because it's something I didn't hear about from anywhere else. And it's good to have that there as a documentation of what, what was done. There's this other great website that I think it's still in operation. I haven't been to it lately, but it was called Anti-White Watch. Do you know this one?
No, I haven't heard of that, but that sounds great.
It's this great website, and what they do is they document every single murder that's been committed, basically by a foreigner or a migrant or an invader of some kind against white people, because we're told all day long that white people are the scum of the earth and that they oppress.
There's another one. Maybe they rebranded. I follow one. I think they have various social media presence. It's called Everyday. And it basically, for every day of the calendar, has an instance of like black on white or quote unquote migrant on white crime. And so we don't forget. And it goes back, some of this stuff goes back to the 90s, goes back to the 80s, just horrible crimes. A lot of it comes from North America, the United States, because there's just so much more of that going on there. I mean, what's happening in Europe is relatively recent, I suppose. But yeah, so maybe that's a new reiteration of this. Anti-white watch.
So they actually, even on this site, they actually had a map, and you could see on each map. So of course in the United States it'd just be full of it, and then now you're starting to see them in Sweden, and there's a couple here and there in Canada now, and basically each one will say what happened, who was the victim, who was the perpetrator, the date that it happened, and I think it's really something great for us to have. And but however, from my perspective, I'm not going to go check it every day.
Yeah,
I haven't been to that website in a long time, because I know that this is happening, and I don't need to go there to remind myself that it's happening. However, it's a very useful resource that exists, and I definitely think the guys that are behind it are doing great work. Just like I think that the people that document the stuff are doing great work. But what I say to people is, once you've been once you've fully ingested, I hate the phrase the red pill, black pill stuff. I know it's cliche, but once you fully digested the red pill and you realize what's going on, you don't need to go. You don't need to then go follow every single migrant or non-white attack on whites every day. I'd say that that's something you need to understand that it's happening, and then you plan your life knowing this truth and trying to make the situation that you have the best for you. And I think a lot of people might lose track of that at times, because they can get so focused on the big picture. That, oh, well, there's more migrants arriving every day. There's all these crimes every day. Yes, of course, that's true. But you still have to, work on yourself and put yourself in the best situation possible to be able to, live in clown world now, because it's gonna be a long time before we get out of any of this, and it's about to get a lot worse.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I've always tried to make sure that I'm offering something and not just your 2 minutes of hate. I've said many times that when I started my channel, I made a decision not to make, feminist get wrecked videos, or let's check in on the SJWs and see what lunacy they're up to, because, well, for one reason, I don't have the technical skill to make those stylistic videos anyway, and because a lot of other people were doing that much better than I could do anyway. But also, I just felt well, I kind of want to offer some sort of solution. I mean, something, some positive note. And another analogy, similar to the military officer, I think it's Devin Stack, who calls himself black-pilled, but I don't think he's actually that, lost into the realm of total, he's demoralized. I think he's done well for himself, and he's adapted well to the world that we have to live in, but he still calls himself black-pilled, But he once described us, and particularly, I suppose, those of us who make stuff, make videos, make articles, whatever, that we're kind of like the building inspectors, and we have to document what's wrong with these buildings. That's our job. We're not the architects necessarily. We're not the builders of what's to come, but we are the building inspectors, and we're noticing what's wrong, and we are trying to raise the alarm that this building is going to collapse pretty soon. You might want to fix this thing here, and okay, I know that this looks like a really expensive or a really uncomfortable task, but we're going to have to fix this, and that's our job. And then someone in the comments a while ago mentioned Stoicism, and I was going to mention that too. I think Stoicism has been really useful just for me personally, and I don't even think I got into it willingly, or I said, I want to be a Stoicist, or I want to learn more about Stoicism. It's just things happened in my life, and my natural response was to be stoic about it. And just from my sense of Stoicism is that, like you were saying, you become aware of the problem, you become aware of the situation you're in, and then you accept what you can't do about it, and then you understand that there are some things that you can do, and you try to do them. And I think that that is a really good mindset to be in. You know, a lot of people ride this sort of white pill, black pill roller coaster. And I think that framework is kind of creating a lot of bipolar people online, because some days are good and some days are bad, but try to keep a general even keel. Because Elon Musk says he wants to buy Twitter doesn't mean that we're going to save big tech and we have a champion fighting on our side and woohoo, I'm white pilled now, everything is fine. Calm down, maybe it's not going to be that good. And then, like you said, once you've understood that the anti-white narrative is everywhere, that violence against whites, against Europeans is everywhere and increasing, and no one seems to care, no one in the mainstream, no one in law enforcement, no one in government, we've all been betrayed. Once you're aware of that, though, well, you don't need to wallow in it. You are now red pilled. You are now aware of the situation, but you don't need to lose your head over it. Just accept that that's the situation you're in. Accept that you're a soldier in the trenches. Accept that you're an emperor like Marcus Aurelius, who is fighting on all sorts of different fronts to keep the empire intact. That's your lot in life, and get on with it. And I've talked a lot in the old videos I made about how, reading philosophy is a good way to help. Or I'm sure people who are religious, their religion helps them. I think spirituality is a good resource to rely on. Nothing wrong with that. And going to the gym, doing any sort of like what Kaczynski calls the surrogate activities that sort of mimic what our ancestors used to do just every day because that was life. But physical exercise, being in nature, making stuff with your hands, expressing your creative side. You'd be amazed how good you feel after a 2-hour session in the gym or spending a day in the woods camping or something. You'll notice that you feel nice, you feel good, and the problems of the world dissipate for those, for that day or for those hours. And again, I say this as someone who's quite, who has a lot of melancholy. I've been at parties where everyone is having a good time, and I'm standing there thinking, man, these good times are going to be over so soon, and none of these people have any idea, and they're so unprepared, and all of this can just disappear in a flash. So I have that disposition. I know I don't want to sound like I'm perfect here, but that's what has worked for me, is just being stoic about these things. Sometimes accepting that, this is bad news. This is bad. Today sucks. Not getting too excited about the good things because I'm aware of the situation. I'm aware that I shouldn't get, my hopes up too high. I'm aware of the magnitude of the struggle. And then just in your day-to-day life, get on with it. And another thing that the Stoics taught, which I think is just so wise, it just shows how wise they were, going back more than 2,000 years ago, that they understood this. Because today we're bombarded with content. But they, 2,000 years ago, were also aware of this, that what you see, what you put into your mind will affect the way you think. It will affect your mood. So if all you're doing is watching, chimp out videos and white people getting beat up at school, I don't watch that stuff, and I rarely share it because I think that is demoralizing. I don't like to see a video of a young white child being attacked by wildlife. I don't think that, for anyone who's been red pilled, we don't need to see that anymore. We know that happens. And then, so I think it was really interesting. I think it was Epictetus, who's got a really funny name, but that's his name, was the one who said, like, be careful about what you put into your mind. And I think that's just so amazing that they, over 2,000 years ago, were aware of that. and we are at so much more risk today with all of the distractions and advertisement and content, quote unquote, that's around us that we can be bombarded with. We're so at risk of just having our minds become this battlefield, this chaotic mess. So I think another thing that can be useful is just really controlling, trying to keep some control over what you're watching, and that's also why I try not to get too much into sharing that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I think like for me, I always try to like think of who's actually going to consume this stuff. So if I'm speaking to a person in my personal life, if it's the right context and like an issue like migration or like LGBT or something like that comes up, I will tell the truth. And thankfully, like the situation I'm in, I don't really have to worry about like facing that much social cost over it. I mean, I've had like one or two in the last since moving to Russia. I've had like one or two people like get angry at me for my political views, and most of them were like shit libs, expats, usually from Britain for some reason. They seem to be the worst. But there's not so many shit libs that I actually interact with. So when someone maybe mentions Paris or something like that, or also I might mention like, well, it's not quite that nice anymore, and mostly it's because of migration. It's not.
Well, actually, that's if I may, that's actually a good point too, because sometimes this stuff can save our lives. Like, sometimes whether to normies or even people who might be a bit more on the red pilled side, it's actually still worth it to sometimes share like what's reality like, because it can actually save your life to not go to these places, or if you're going to go, keep your head on a swivel and keep your wits about you, because this isn't what you think it used to be. So I think that's a good point.
Yeah, like I will say to people that because like I mean I've actually had this a few times, because like with a lot of people I interact with in Russia, they're on average they're a lot more based than people that you would in the West. I'm not, and again I'm not shilling for the Russian government or anything. If I get comments accusing me that, you're getting banned. But a lot of times they don't really know what it's like in the West. So a lot of times their perception of a city like New York, for example, their perception comes from friends. Unfortunately, I actually met this one girl who wanted to go to New York so badly because she saw the TV show Friends, and she thought it was just going to be like amazing for her there. And then she eventually actually did end up going, and she hated it, and she came back, not because of like being a victim of crime or anything, but just because of like how shitty life is in one of these Western cities. How, like if it's so expensive, and you basically can't live unless you're this like multimillionaire in these days. But like a lot of their perception comes from that, or maybe they'll still perceive like Canada as being like an entirely white country, or they'll perceive America as being a predominantly white country. And oftentimes I'll say, well, a city like Detroit, it used to be this industrial powerhouse, like the place where all the cars were produced, and it was this great city. But then the demographic change basically has ruined it over the years. And I think that kind of like putting those kind of red pills in here and there are ways that you can actually get to people. Or if anyone brings up, like a lot of times they'll ask me, well, like what's going on with this like gender stuff in Canada? Like they're saying that like you can't use these pronouns, and I'll explain like both what's happening and like basically the abuse, just how abusive the whole like LGBT agenda really is. Because a lot of people I interact, they'll see it and they'll think it's like weird and stuff, but they don't realize just how evil and abusive it really is. So I'll do with people that maybe aren't as political or aren't as informed on these issues, I'll do that. But then what I won't do is I won't like share, like you said, videos of white people being beaten up by non-whites, or I won't share. Another thing I also I refuse to share on social media is I won't share like videos of like some LGBT trash from like some of these parades or these drag story hours. That's like imagery that I don't want. I think that people should avoid, even if you're red pilled, and even if you're completely against it. First of all, it makes you despair when you already know that this is happening, and secondly, it does like numb the mind. Like one thing I've noticed is that whenever I see like an image of a girl in like this really like kind of like cute Halloween costume or something like that, I immediately now think that it's actually a man pretending to be a woman.
Oh god!
Because just of how like how much they force this like transgender stuff into the media.
Oh man,
I'm always
stuff like that. Yeah, I now can hardly enjoy anything because I always think like, or like something from the past, for example. I'll be watching an old film or something, and I'll think, oh man, that would be so verboten today. That would trigger an SJW today. That would, like, they've already rerouted the wiring of our brains and this with this constant stuff. It's such a shame.
Yeah, like even as me, someone who's obviously on the right wing side of the dissident right side of all these issues. Even with me, when I just see like it could be an image or something, it could be a girl at a Halloween party or something like that. But if she's wearing like a cheerleader outfit or one of those like Japanese schoolgirl ones, I immediately think it must be it's going to be a man pretending to be a woman, because all of the transgender stuff, it's always like in these like hyper feminine outfits.
Yes.
They need to like shove down, well, this is actually a woman, and that's how like propaganda really affects your mind. And I try to avoid sharing that on social media, because I know it really is poison, even if you're against it. Another funny example is that I saw an advertisement in Russia that it had an image of a rainbow on it, and I immediately thought that it was something LGBT. But then upon inspection, it wasn't. It was just a picture of a rainbow. But the image
that's what I mean, man. Like they have done a number on us. Like, oh man, that's it's infuriating that we can't even just look at rainbows.
Look at a rainbow anymore without thinking about homosexuality.
It can get really frustrating. I live in a small town in Spain, and actually, right now, if I go down the street and walk past the chemists, there is a huge, massive like poster put up in the window advertising sun cream, and it's a white woman who appears pregnant. She's wearing like a bathing suit top and has a bare belly, and the belly is very round, very pregnant. But she's also holding in her arms a brown baby with like an afro. And there's no father present. There's no man in this image at all. Maybe he's the one taking the picture, or more likely, he's just not there at all. And so every day I have to like walk past a massive chemist shop, a massive poster at the pharmacy or the chemist, whatever term you want to use, and it's like promoting, race mixing and single mothers, and then if I continue down the street and take a turn and go down here, on the side of a government building, this is incredible. There's in my town where I live, there's like a local cross-dresser. He's like he's like a local celebrity. Whenever there's like a music festival or whatever, he gets up in drag and he sings. He's a gay man, very gay, like really swishy. But his thing is to like dress as a woman and sing songs. And everyone loves him. Everyone promotes. Everyone supports him. He's so brave and stunning, right? Okay. But as we were coming out of the pandemic, the town where I live, the city council started paying for like different people who work in town, entrepreneurs, etc. They did like a little campaign where they would take their picture. They're all wearing this, the same sort of like color code. It's like a gray, black and white photograph, but then like they're wearing these sort of turquoise colored T-shirts with a slogan on it that's basically saying like, we're gonna make it. Basically, we're gonna come back. After the lockdown, after the tragedy of the pandemic, we're gonna come back. And they were put up at various places, but they're all very like small, on a bus stop, side of a bus stop maybe. But then the biggest one, it's massive. It is huge, and it's been up now. The other ones got taken down within like a few months. They were up and then they were down, but this one has been up now for like over a year, and it's huge. And it's this gay drag queen singer. It's his picture. He's all dressed in drag. He's got the fake tits on. He's got his wig on. He's got his makeup on, and it's huge. And it's occupying the entire side of this government building. And it's him with the slogan, we're gonna come back. We're gonna remontar is the Spanish word.
It makes me not want to come back.
Yeah, exactly. And then he's got a little blurb that he said, like, just be yourself, and the world will be okay. Like whenever I feel bad, I just remember to be myself. And I had to like walk past that. It was actually I recently moved, but that was actually right on my street of this town for a while. So even in these small towns, you still can't get away from this stuff. And that's why it can be really frustrating and demoralizing, because there are some times, like, and especially with the COVID stuff, I think I understand why people got really, and I don't think we're out of the woods yet at all. But I understand why people got really affected by that and started maybe directing their focus more to that, because that affected us in such an acute and intense way, more than some other things might do, like immigration or trans kids. But anyway, this stuff is even in my small town, and I literally can't escape. I had to walk past it every day, and it was unreal. And I'm just thinking, this is so demoralizing.
I mean, I definitely felt that way when I used to live in Toronto. I mean, it's one of the most liberal cities in the world, and one of the most diverse as well. So you can imagine what kind of place you can imagine what kind of place it would be. Thankfully, I've kind of I avoid the worst of that these days. But I do think a lot of people they can't like let it affect them too much. Like there is this, I forget who it was that said this about propaganda, that something like in the Soviet Union, they would put pictures of Lenin and Stalin everywhere, kind of like as the not to get people to like Lenin or Stalin, but to just remind them as this big like fu to any like sane Russian back in the day. Is this big like fu to say this we rule over you now, you're gonna like bow down and worship the someone as awful as Lenin, and you're gonna like it, and it's kind of like this way of like demoralizing you. And I feel like a lot of the propaganda is that, like you mentioned the advertisements, like I've seen that one. I've seen one of those black and white advertisements. I've seen that once or twice in Russia, but not for a long time. But those ones, like it cannot be a mistake, because it's not like they're just randomly choosing the models for this. It's not a mistake at all. There is like a deliberate, conscious choice being made, because I've never seen an advertisement with like a Hispanic man and an Asian woman in it before, but I've seen like the black man white woman combination. That's like absolutely.
Oh, sorry. The pictures here, they're not black. They're black and white. That's the color scheme. The pictures are taken in black. I think there's like 3 black people who live here in this entire town. So, and they weren't featured in the posters.
Okay.
Yeah. So I meant to say the pictures of these local entrepreneurs or local quote unquote.
The advertisement.
Yeah, they were. The picture was in black and white film, and then they would wear these like turquoise T-shirts. So that's the color popping out of the picture, and then it had the slogan on the T-shirt. Vamos a remontar. We're gonna come back. So yeah, that was it. I haven't seen any black male, white female advertisement here, but except for the one that's on the window of the chemist, which is pretty much the same thing. I mean, she's holding a black baby, and she's also in a pretty pregnant state.
It's amazing, like how like insane the details they'll go into. Like imply that, like there was this one ad where like I like to watch the reviews that Mark Collette does of the Christmas ads every year.
Yeah. Oh god,
those are always hilarious videos. I love those videos that he makes every year. There was one that like I think that like there wasn't like a white woman in the ad, but like the main guy was like mixed race, and then they made like the voice of his mother on the phone sound extremely white. So it's like they just go to like the most.
I think the quote you were thinking of is Theodore Dalrymple, where I think what he said was that in the Soviet Union, the propaganda was intentionally absurd. Like it made you the point of the propaganda was to show you something that every neuron in your brain recognizes as a lie, as false, but you're forced to accept it as true. And that's how they demoralize the population. That's how they beat the population down. And that's very similar to what we are experiencing when we have, in this case, the picture of the person might drown. He's not trans. He knows he's a man. He's a cross-dresser. He's a transvestite. But there's other cases where, no, they are literally telling us that we have to believe that this person who's clearly a man in a dress is actually a woman. And this interracial couple is totally normal. And in fact, every couple is interracial now, even though in cases of Britain, the black population is like 3%, yet they make up like 90% of all of the characters portrayed in the advertisements. Yeah, and that's just designed to make our heads explode, but we have to accept the lie.
There's an updated version of the meme. It's 13% of the population, 54% of the murders, 100% of the advertisements.
Yeah. It's incredible. I mean, sometimes we just have to laugh about it, I guess, too. That's another thing. Is some of us, I mean, it's not good, but there is a humor. The gallows humor, I suppose, is the term for it.
Yeah. So, like, kind of shifting gear a bit. The other good videos you made were you made them about a year ago, and on the problems that the dissident right is facing, both like the thought leaders and the followers. I don't know.
Mhm.
I'm a content creator, so I guess I would be like a minor, maybe thought leader in the dissident right. Certainly not one of the big boys, but also I wouldn't consider myself a follower. I am a content creator, and I thought that a lot of
Mhm.
it was a lot of it resonated with me. Like I would say, maybe like I might be guilty of some of them. Maybe I am guilty of like making content that's kind of like either escapist or not super relevant. But at the same time, I don't want to make, like I said, don't want to make too much content that's like too black pilled, as we were talking about earlier.
Mhm.
Maybe first, like briefly, let people know what were the problems you talked about in that videos, and have you seen anything change over the last year, or do you think we're kind of still in the same stagnation?
I think we're in the same stagnation, to be honest. Probably because nobody saw those videos. I am very minor. I am very. I actually would consider myself still more of like on the follower side. Um, yeah, I make stuff, but it doesn't get seen by that many people. And so I made a two-part series of videos um, around 2021. Was it last year? Some of the dates are a bit blurry now because just everything's been a whirlwind, I suppose. But it was in particular during a time of like there was some infighting, I suppose, between uh, the online right, the dissident right, regarding uh, the disease which can't be named, the injection, the lockdowns, all that sort of thing. And the dissident right was just all over the place with it. We had no unified front. We had no principles on it. No stance. And everyone was just sort of like at each other's heels. And um, one faction was really mocking the other side, who had genuine concerns about what was going on over the past 2 years and what could be coming. And so I made a video urging the leadership, the most prominent voices, to remember what it is that we're doing or they're doing, which is to defend your people, your family, and your home. And if your philosophy doesn't defend those things, what are you doing? And so if you're counter signaling or mocking, using terms like anti-lockdown truthers, anti-vaxxers to describe people with these concerns, then you're not really being any different than the shitlibs and blue checks who say those things about us all the time. So are you defending your people? Are you defending your family? And are you defending your home? When your countrymen are placed in lockdown for about 3 months and they start to voice their discontent about that, and you call them boomer tards, are you supporting your countrymen? Are you supporting your family and your home? I don't think so. And so I encourage people to, remember. And also, I sort of criticized people, big voices, prominent voices who had been making 3 hour, 4 hour long live streams about obscure philosophical theories from the 18th century, or movie reviews of some obscure film from the 1980s. And you said that you might be guilty of that yourself. I also, like, I don't really do movie reviews or anything like that. And I agree with you that from time to time, it's not a problem to make stuff like that, to do a book review or a movie review. Why not? We have to live like normal people too. I mean, like, not normies, but it's okay. It's nice to watch films. It's nice to talk about films. It's nice to listen to music. It's nice to talk about music. I am totally fine with that. And in fact, some I spoke to some people. I won't name any names, but I spoke to some people who gave me another perspective, and they said, "Well, like, what would you do if, with any wrong word, any misstep, and your channel with 55,000 subs, 100,000 subs, which is now also your way of life, it's how you make a living, can be taken from you. What would you do? What kind of content would you recommend making when you've got the eye of Sauron fixed on you? And that was actually a very good criticism of my criticism. I understand where they're coming from. If you do have a big presence and they are watching every move you make and listening to every word you say, yeah, maybe it's a good idea to just let's do some movie reviews from a nationalist perspective, and okay, that's fine. But I just felt like it was getting a bit too academic, a bit too theoretical, and while our countrymen, our nations, our families were actually suffering, and there was an actual real problem, and lots of lies and misinformation out there, I thought it was more important that we focus on that, be united on that, stop mocking people who are concerned about these things, because it was. I think people are forgetting just how crazy things were over the 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, how many lies were out there, how much pressure was being exerted on people, how much coercion, if not even outright force, to do things that they didn't want to do that could have disastrous consequences. And just to poo-poo all that away, I thought was completely unbecoming of a movement that says it supposedly cares about our nations and our people. And that was the part one. And then the second one I made was about the fellowship, what I called the fellowship, which is people like me, minor voices that might have a channel here and there, or just the people who listen or read, and they form the group chats and stuff like that. And in that video, I talked about just like some behavioral tendencies that I think kind of are like own goals at the end of the day. And I'm not the only one who's noticed this. Like Blair Cottrell has talked about this a lot too, just to name one example, about like how there's a sizable portion of people on our side who like play right into the hands of the Hollywood caricature of the neo German, 1930s German, the skinhead types and Fed posting types, and they get really aggressive. They're like, I feel like many times the way to get people on our side is to be attractive and be articulate. And in fact, if you spy on leftoid Twitter accounts or Reddit pages or whatever, they are more afraid of us when we are well dressed, well spoken, and well behaved. They love it when people on our side act like skinheads and throw up Romans and all this stuff. So I made a video to encourage like better behavior. In that video, I also talked about like not riding the white pill, black pill roller coaster and just trying to stay cool, trying to stay cool-headed. Some days are bad, some days are good. Some developments kind of might be good. Keep your wits about you, keep your instincts about you. Some events are really bad and really demoralizing. Okay, but we know that. I talked about like not being bitchy amongst ourselves, like ankle biting and backbiting and creating drama, purity spiraling, all this stuff that just gets us nowhere. And I think it's just such, I don't know, it's like what comes first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know if this caused the stagnation or if this is a result of the stagnation, but I feel like we're just so stagnated in the Anglosphere, right? And lockdowns and travel provisions had a lot to do with this. Like we haven't been able to have conferences, we haven't been able to meet up in real life. I think even still to this day, several countries where we live are, they've closed. They still have like either the borders closed to travelers, or you need to do all this stuff to get in, stuff which I personally will not do. I refuse to do it. I'm not going to take a test to go to somewhere. I'm not going to wear a FP92 mask on a plane. I don't buy any bit of this bullshit. But in any case, we haven't been able to meet up and things like that. So we've just been stuck online. And I think people are like getting sort of like cabin fever, where you're like just cooped up, for such a long time that now we're just bickering with each other, and it's not good. So that was what I addressed to the followship, quote unquote, and yeah, that was pretty much it.
Yeah, I saw. I think you made those videos like about a year or even more ago, and I actually saw them in the last like couple of weeks, and unfortunately, I think they could have been made yesterday, and they would have been just as relevant.
Well,
Um,
exactly. Just this last week, the whole like schizo
oh,
thing
yeah,
blew up again, where it's like anyone who, and also like your predictions were wrong, or your predictions were wrong, or my predictions. It's just such bullshit.
yeah,
And I like, again, I do not understand how people who call themselves dissident nationalists cannot understand why people are concerned about what's been going on over the past 2 years, and concerned about what's to come, and thinking about what's to come, and trying to prepare. Like, again, some of us don't want to make videos about some economic theory from 1927. Some of us want to work on how to improve our lives, or like survive what could be coming. We want to speculate. That used to be okay, that you could actually like, speculate, hey, what's coming? It's called prepping, I suppose. And some of us were doing that, and we get accused of all sorts of things. We get accused of forgetting or abandoning the racial fight. We get accused of being schizocons, and it's just like, from people on our side, that I just don't
yeah,
understand. I do not understand.
yeah.
I mean, I do, because pardon me, I actually do understand. I said that side are acting like hipsters. They've carved out a little niche where they're the online intellectual, and they want to maintain their image as the online intellectual. The normies were able to pick up on the bullshit of the past 2 years. So now, being an online intellectual and being a dissident became like their favorite indie band in high school, which went mainstream. And so now they have to act like they were never fans of that indie band, because now they've gone mainstream. So they're just acting like hipsters, really. And I just think it's such a your status as an online celebrity, media personality, isn't that important as the truth and helping people. Like, we're supposed to be a movement, quote unquote. So like, we should act like one, and not just always bicker about who's got the best predictions.
Yeah, I don't want to get too much into the drama stuff, but yeah, I really felt the same way. And with the what annoyed me so much is, I guess, like that a lot of people, like you said, are kind of like these hipsters. Like, I feel like, and I'm going to get onto why I think like Telegram is kind of part of the problem. Not that I'm going to stop using it. It's extremely useful, but it has a lot of problems. That what Telegram has kind of done to us, to the dissident right, is it's kind of put us in this cage, like a bunch of like roosters or something like that, where we all like all we have to do is just to fight each other, because you're not reaching a mainstream audience anymore. You don't really have that same connection that you did to the mainstream like you did on Twitter. Now, I think Twitter is hell, and I'm never going back to it. But it had the benefit that you actually could reach people who weren't already red pilled, and you had a big potential to do that. With Telegram, the problem is that like it's the dissident right has been put in this cage. The left isn't there, the normies aren't there, the centrists aren't there. Basically, it's like, and the way to get attention and to get like the dopamine hits that you used to get on Twitter by posting this like big post that got a lot of likes. The way you get that is by punching someone on the right by like calling them a schizo, like saying, oh, their predictions were wrong. And I do feel like, I'm not going to name names here because I don't want this to be a drama stream. You might know who you might have an idea though.
Yeah.
Like the stuff with predictions, like it seems like the people pushing this kind of they seem to like want to prove themselves to be more big brain than other right wingers,
Exactly.
and not actually like interested in either truth or actually advancing any like coherent narrative at all. Because I and then not to mention, just like I just thought with a lot of them that like the audacity to talk about predictions when frankly I think some of them were just way off for a very
some of them
long
were in favor of the most fundamental measures that were imposed upon us, and even talking about like predicted that a very fundamental aspect was going to be a great success. So like,
Yeah.
let's not talk about predictions because you guys have no legs to stand on.
And like one thing I did was I wanted to come clean after, with the pandemic, when it became clear that what was really going on. I wanted to come clean. That's when I said, yeah, the things that I came out and said at the beginning were incorrect, because it was based on the information that we had back then. That was my best decision, but that was what I thought was the most informed position. But then, as more evidence appeared, it was clear that I was incorrect, and I wanted to be a man and actually come out and say that, to own up to being incorrect. And the thing is this: nobody can predict what's going on, what's going to happen next in clown worlds. Honestly, like, predictions these days are really a fool's errand. They're really a fool's errand, because
I agree.
Nobody in the world, even the elites, don't know what's going to happen next. And then the other problem is that one thing you'll also see is that somebody will make a prediction based on what might happen, and then when that thing doesn't happen, well, then they'll say, well, then that person was a schizo. When, like, they'll have a document saying that they want to do this, and then if you post, well, here's this document of this globalist organization saying that they want this. Well, then if they're not able to succeed, well, then instead of it being, well, thank God they didn't succeed on doing that, then it's, oh, you're a schizo because
or if the timing is off by like a year or 6 months or something, then you're still wrong. And what I find most intriguing about this, and I do think that my assessment is right. I think they are just like hipsters who don't want their favorite indie band to go mainstream. They want to keep it to themselves. They want to keep the polish on their shiny big brain badge, and they don't want to get tarnished by the masses, the Q-tards, the normies who've been able to pick up on some of this stuff as well. So obviously it doesn't require that much of a big brain. But what I found most surprising about it, whether or not you want to maintain your intellectual status or your brand, if you want to call it that, you're still in the dissident right. You're still in the nationalist right. You're still in the pro-white movement, pro-white circle. That already makes you fringe. Like, oh yeah,
like you don't. I find it hilarious, like, using the phrase conspiracy theory when all a conspiracy theory means is that it means you don't believe what people in power said is true. Like, that's basically what conspiracy theory means.
Like, how could it be schizo to say, I actually don't trust governments and institutions that have a track record of hating me and everyone who looks like me and thinks like me? I don't trust that they have my best interests at heart, and I'm going to be very, very skeptical and voice my skepticism. How could that be the schizo position? Like, we have a plethora of evidence, lived experience and evidence that backs up our claim that no, these institutions and these organizations and these people with power don't seem to like us very much. So how is it schizo? How is it conspirator to say, hey, maybe they're onto something bad here. Maybe they've got bad plans. I don't know. It's just it's so funny. But I think it's because we're cooped up in Telegram. We're just
so physically and
exactly. And I think Nick Jovi calls it salon culture, like, what we're doing now with live streams and things like that. That we're fomenting a sort of salon culture. Where we get together, like in the golden age of Paris, the artists, the philosophers, and we talk and we sort of compete, even sort of intellectually or artistically and that sort of thing. And I think that's great. I think that's fine. And I believe that this is actually one of our successes, is that, yes, the platforms might be alternative, they might be obscure, maybe they don't have as much reach, but we are sort of creating a sort of parallel world, which is one of the things we talk about doing all the time. But we have this parallel system, media, parallel entertainment, infotainment. And if World War III is an information war, we're certainly fighting it. So I think it's part of it is good. It's good to have these conversations. It's good to get a bunch of guys together to talk and be philosophical and be intellectual. That's all great. But when it's becoming like this ankle biting, I've got to own the schizocons, and I've got to own the conspirators. It's like, what are you doing?
The biggest example for me, the one that annoyed me the most. Now, I don't participate in. I generally don't, unless like I'm personally attacked. I don't participate in the back and forths on Telegram. But the one that annoyed me the most was like when at the beginning of this year, when the restrictions were being dropped. Some people like who were on the entire who had been calling everyone like, oh, schizo this, schizo that, Q-tard, conspiracy stuff. A lot of them then came out and said like, oh, look, all the schizos are now going to be like owned. Oh my God, they went insane. But then like what I said about that was, first of all, the last 2 years happened, and like if you're saying that like your prediction was right, I mean, I messaged, I think I sent this joke to you, but it would be like, it's like a weatherman. If you know, you come out and say after you've been wrong for 2 years in a row, when the pandemic finally does end, you come out and say, oh, my prediction was right. I mean, that's like a weatherman predicting rain incorrectly for 10 days in a row. And then on the 11th day, when it actually does rain, he says, oh, look, all these other weathermen were saying it would never rain again. It did rain.
I also took umbrage with the fact that this faction's predictions were based on, timelines. So it's actually not a big brain prediction. It's actually not putting much skin in the game to say that the coup will end at some point, or that lockdowns will end at some point. Obviously, that was going to happen. A virus, whether real or otherwise, whether you believe they exist or otherwise, are not permanent. And to the extent that they continue to exist, we usually adapt to them over time, and that's how we don't get sick from them or don't get as sick from them, according to that perspective. So to say, oh, the coup wasn't going to last forever, that's not a big brain prediction. And to say that lockdowns were going to last forever is not a big brain prediction. And so when countries were coming out of lockdown, to like gloat and say, "Hey, I told you so," it's like, yeah, we all know they weren't going to last forever. That's not what we're saying. And also, it depended on the country. I was actually kind of laughing in a sort of bitter way when people were saying, "See, told you so," because the lockdowns were ending in their country. Meanwhile, in another European country or another country in the white sphere, or even outside the white sphere, was like that same day mandating forced jabs for over 65s, or for university students, or extending their lockdown by 2 weeks, or some other draconian policy. So it all depended on where you were in the world too. So to say, well, in my country it's ending, so I'm really smart. No, it doesn't work like that. If you care about global white well-being.
But here's like how this like kind of exposes like this kind of section of the right as being really insular. Is, first of all, my reaction wasn't, oh shit, my prediction I made. It was, thank God that these restrictions are ending. They're interfering with my life. I want them to be over. No, I don't care about online prestige as much as I care about being able to live my day-to-day life. And
secondly, let me just say for the record, everyone can clip this soundbite. I hope I'm wrong about so much of what I talk about.
Oh yeah. But the other thing is that like this is something that needs to be used as like an indictment against the elites. So say like the forced injection campaign, that came to an end eventually, and they've let up on it. But if your reaction to it is, haha, schizo's owned or something like that, well, then you're just completely letting go what the actual enemy has done over the last 2 years, when in reality, people should be furious about them.
Yeah, like people are forgetting. People are, and I'm not just referring to normies. Obviously, normies are forgetting. People are going back to their normal lives and forgetting everything that they did to us. I'm not going to forget. Yeah, I'm really pissed off still.
Don't. Yeah, what I was going to say was that, like, this is something that needs to be used as like this major indictment against the elites. Mm-hmm. It's like saying that like you broke your leg, but then 10 seconds later it doesn't matter anymore. Well, your leg is still broken,
Right.
And then secondly, maybe that's a bit of a bigger topic, which we maybe shouldn't get into on this stream, but like just the changes that have been made over the last couple of years. The other one I wanted to bring up was, I made a video talking about this when this was kind of fresh news, but it's kind of gone by the wayside. But with like the Ukraine conflict, I feel like it also really kind of exposed a lot of immaturity on the right. I really like, and I'm saying this as someone that's like adjacent to that right now. I'm not in Ukraine, I'm in Russia. And when this happened, so like basically the dissident right went on this huge another infighting campaign, like, oh, I support Russia, I support Ukraine. And it was, to me, it really sounded more like people like arguing about what sports team they like. It didn't really, it was like the right-wing version. They were arguing, well, Ukraine has more of tribe members. No, Russia has more tribe members. Well, you're a shill, whatever. And to me, as someone that like my first reaction was, oh shit, I hope that my entire livelihood doesn't get ruined by this. Thankfully, that didn't happen. And then my second thing I had to think of was, how do I calm down my family members who read the mainstream media and are convinced that I'm going to either be detained or beaten to death in the street or something like that? I had a lot of shit to deal with, and I didn't know what was going to happen to myself. And I had to come out and just say, like, taking these like sides on this conflict, which nobody on the online right has any influence over whatsoever.
Exactly.
It's just so childish, and to like fight someone over that, to go on.
We're already in the metaverse. That's the thing. We're already in the metaverse, and people, you're like you said, we don't have any influence over this, so it's all just so very easy to start taking sides and making this it's your new raison d'être. Like it's just silly season. And I actually wrote a Substack essay about this that people can go read if they want to, see my ideas fully fleshed out. But I think that COVID and the Russia-Ukraine conflict just irrevocably broke the Anglosphere online right. Like and probably, I mean, that's a good thing, I suppose, because if we're not on the same side and we don't want the same things, we don't have the same goals, and if we have actually this severe level of like differences on these issues, then maybe it's better that we start going our separate ways, and we're not on the same team, which happens a lot. If you look at history, there's all sorts of organizations that start up and then break into different factions and things. But I just feel like also what was really disappointing was that it seemed like, going back to that thing that we're just living in the metaverse and no one actually believes what they said that they believe in. They're not actual principles. Whatever the current thing is, they just like to shift their opinion or shift their position because it's more entertaining to do so, or it's more intellectually stimulating for them to do so because they don't actually believe in anything. Whereas like my response was, well, how do I position myself as someone who cares about European peoples? And that I go from that baseline. And that's pretty much it. But I was just really surprised to see, people who I know in the past said things like, no more brother wars, and, all wars are merchant schemes. And now they're actually like kind of celebrating this act of aggression, whichever side you want to say is the aggressor, whatever. But they're like, picking a side and having a real emotional investment in this and ideological investment in it. It's like, I thought we represented something different. That was my main reaction to that.
Yeah.
I was just a bit surprised and disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, that one, like, for me, really hammered home just how pathetic the Twitter, now Telegram as well, hot takes are on this stuff, because like that one was like, for me, I had to ban a lot of people from my Telegram chat, and I've eventually just deleted it because it was just it was really demoralizing, having to read about all these like hot takes on it when I'm like, wondering, well, what's going to happen with my own personal life. You realize like the situation was not. Let me just say, it was not funny at all. It was not entertaining. The videos of tanks exploding and stuff like that were.
Oh yeah, that was another thing I found really disagreeable. Was like, I suppose, I don't know, like if it's correct to say he's a member of the dissident right, but he's certainly adjacent, and his followers are certainly amongst our circles as well. But like Fuentes was, basically off his tits with glee, rubbing his hands with glee, like, based Russia, let's wipe them off the planet, here we go, let's go. And it's like, dude, what? I can't. It's because you live in the metaverse, because you're just a child. None of this affects you. It's all entertainment for you because you're miles away from it, and it was just silly.
Yeah, and I mean, I obviously want the best for Russia because I live in the country, and I do definitely have a vested interest, and I have an emotional connection to the Russian people. A lot of all my friends here are, and most of my, almost everyone I know and interact with on my day-to-day basis is, and I have tons of friends, and I obviously want the best for the country, but at the same time,
Who was it? Who was it that said that every war between Europeans is a civil war? I think it was some general said that, and that's always stuck with me. Of course, it's anyone who actually like genuinely cares about these sort of things will feel a bit sort of sad, and this is, and of course we aren't the ones. If we had control, if we had any influence, this wouldn't be happening. We don't want these things to happen, but it looks like quite a sizable portion of people around these areas, around this circle, were actually waving pom-poms and all hyped up about it.
Well, I mean, because it's just kind of another thing to like post your hot takes about, and to feel like you're actually, it's hyper real. I mean, the reality is really quite brutal, and it was not funny at all. It's still not funny. Now, I'm not going to like claim and say that like, oh, woe is me, everything's bad for me, because like all in all, things have worked out well for me, and I don't really feel like the war is a huge problem, causing a huge problem for me. A few things here and there, but at the time, I mean, I didn't know. Could have been anything, but it kind of just exposed me kind of how childish the online right can be. But I want to kind of shift to something that's actually positive, because I don't think it's all actually negative. I mean, I do agree with like a lot of these criticisms of kind of what's gone on with the online right, but I will say that one thing I do find very encouraging is the people that I meet in real life, and the people who message me and say that. Because oftentimes I have my inbox open on, it's linked on my Telegram. Anyone can message me, and I'm really encouraged by all the guys who come up to me, who go into that send me a message in my inbox and say, "Well, I'm doing this in my life. I graduated from university, and now I'm moving here, and I want to do this. Once things get really bad, I want to be in this position." And or they'll say, "Well, I'm starting a family now, or I've started this new business," and stuff like this. And I find that really encouraging. The guys that are actually, going out there and then trying to do something in their life to improve their situation, who have consumed my content, who know the situation, who know how bad it is, and have realized that they must do something. The people that I hear from who send me messages and tell me what they're doing and the actions that they're taking to better themselves, that I find that very encouraging. So I don't think that the right is hopeless, and that our guys are all just going to be these like internet warriors arguing back and forth on Telegram forever. I think there is actually I think that we do actually have a really great group of people together. It just doesn't always come out if you follow social media.
Oh, sure, I agree, and actually, that's kind of what I was saying in those two videos, was that I think, if we are in a moment of stagnation, and it's because of so many different reasons, many of which are out of our hands, then it would actually behoove us to talk more about what can we do, and foment practical solutions, make more content, more stuff about what can you do to improve your situation, whether it's your mental health, your physical health, your financial well-being, your ability to survive and thrive in this time that we're in. I think that is a really good route to take, and people have been doing that, definitely. Just as we can criticize those that we've been criticizing, etc., but there also are some really good voices out there who've been doing this for quite some time, and even that's one of the uses of Telegram. Like I was in a few Telegram chats, and even some with pretty. What's interesting is that this is one of the shortcomings, I guess, of the dissident right, is that because we get too occupied with ankle biting and drama and purity spiraling and whatever, and hot takes, we sometimes forget to actually be a community. And I've seen and I've experienced a lot more of a sense of community in just sort of like normie dissidents, like people who are just fed up with what's going on, and they're like, I want to make a garden so that I have food independence. And so it's just full of like gardeners. They're kind of based because they know what's going on is wrong, and they don't want to be a part of it, and they want to be independent of it. But they're not particularly woke on JQ stuff, or obscure philosophy from Germany, whatever. They just want a garden, and they just want to understand like how crypto works or whatever, and they're really nice, and you can actually learn from them and get a feeling of community and support from them. And I think that it'd be nice if the dissident right remembered that we can do that too. Um, and especially because things do affect our lives at the end of the day. Some stuff that's going on really does affect us. And just like you, I've had people message me, and I've even spoken to people over the phone, like lengthy conversations. Some people were in a really bad way, and so I feel for what people are going through. I went through some pretty difficult times too. And so, yeah, we definitely have a responsibility and a possibility to help people and support each other.
Yeah, and I think that like what people need in the right, their focus really needs to be to. So once you have figured the situation out, I think that like for anyone listening in their personal life, their main goal needs to be, well, how are they going to actually disconnect from the system in a way that they'll actually be able to sustain themselves, and in a way that the system won't just destroy them, because that's going to be the most important thing for many of us, because as we all know, like if you read what's in the pipelines, it's not good at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Canada is already like trying to push through a digital ID system, and you know, Europe is going to face energy shortages. Many countries might be facing food shortages as the inflation problem. That's like, these are things that you can't. It's no longer just something on your screen. It's something that's actually coming out into your real life now, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to find a way to deal with it. And I think that like understanding the situation is important, but you know, politics should never kind of be like an entertainment. That, and now look, I know I'm okay with things being entertaining. I know that I think that listening to my streams is probably entertaining. Maybe I think my videos are probably entertaining for a lot of people, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a good thing. And I actually am not even against people making entertainment, you know, right wing themed entertainment. I think we actually need a lot more of that.
Yeah, me too.
But it shouldn't be something that like you become so focused on like the grand schemes going on, and the geopolitics and economic theory and stuff like that, when that's something that we don't control. When you need, you know,
Yeah,
your
exactly.
main goal needs to be able to get yourself in a situation, you yourself, your family, and your community, that so that you know you can actually cope with what's coming next. Um,
Yeah,
I guess what.
I feel a bit frustrated because a few months ago, I got really gung ho about going back to my video channel, and I started the Substack and was writing lots of articles and essays and stuff. And then, just as happens seemingly too often, some other things came up in my life, and I was a bit impeded. I wasn't able to do some of the things I had planned to do. Um, and so now that I've finished this move, and hopefully I can start getting back to what I had in mind, and getting even back to like the person I used to be and doing the things that I used to do. But I would like to, you know, help people with their physical health, and let's talk more about nutrition and fitness and exercise. And one of the things that was most difficult for me about lockdowns and then injection requirements or mask requirements was that I just was actually unable to do so many of the things that not only kind of make me who I am, but are also like my sanctuary, my moment of respite, my moment to clear my head or feel good. Like I've seen people in the chat talking about like going out into nature, or I mentioned earlier, you know, doing a nice session at the gym. Um, so when that was when I wasn't able to do those things, it was really difficult, because I think that what really demoralizes people is that we can get through like a lot of adversity if you have a reason why, if you have like motivation and the discipline. um I think it was even like Nietzsche who said that man can survive any uh anyhow as long as he has a why. And I think that was one of the most difficult things lately, was like just they were taking away a lot of our whys, you know. And that's what can get really both actually both how and why. And that's what was really difficult, and can still be difficult, when you're just thinking like, why do I bother with this, you know, what's the point? And you see what's going on. But then, yeah, if once you get that network of support and people start, you know, encouraging you, and you can get back into the swing of things, and you're not always just obsessed with the day-to-day political stuff that actually you don't have any control over, but you do have control over, going camping, go for a walk in the woods, uh, do some exercise, talk to your friends and family about something that isn't politics, and just enjoy the company of other people. And I think people will notice the improvement in their mood. Maybe it'll be brief, but it's still an improvement. And actually, you clear your head and you think and you see a bit clearer, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, you can even use the things that they're using against you as more motivation. An example for me from my life that I used was that for when they had the QR system in place in St. Petersburg, I was barred from going to the gym. And this was in the late last year, early this year. So this is the winter in Russia, like, not the kindest of weather conditions.
Yeah.
But then, like, my alternatives was either not exercise over that period of time, stay inside of my flat and try to do, like, these, like, pathetic, like, not necessarily pathetic, but
I know what you mean. The difference between, like, being able to do serious deadlifts in the gym and now you're stuck doing, like, body weight squats is pretty miserable.
Yeah. Or brave the cold and actually go out there in the cold and and try to get your exercise for the day. And 3 or 4 days a week during the, like, couple months that I was forbidden from going to the gym, I was out on the street running in the cold and the slush,
Based.
and I don't want to like try to pump my own tires that much here, because I don't want to, like, say, oh, I'm some, like, great Viking tough guy or anything like that. I'm not, but I just found it so much more satisfying, that, like, that the globalists, the flu world order, all them, they were trying to say, well, no, you can't do this. And, like, I wanted to prove that, I'm more stubborn than you, that I will still do this. And that's not going to stop me. There was this one day in December, it was minus 22 in St. Petersburg, and that didn't stop me. I still said, I'm going out for my afternoon run, and the cold is not going to stop me.
That's what I was alluding to earlier, where I said it's some of this kind of has to do with your disposition. And, like, I really relate to what you're saying there, because sometimes I do, like, I kind of have this sort of mentality of do your worst. Like, when they try to demoralize you so much, I almost get the response of, like, was that the best you can do? Like, do your worst. Come on, it's almost like embracing the suck of it all, and then just going out and kind of venting it off, but in, like, a healthy way, like going for a run, when they tell you that you're not supposed to. Yeah, definitely. It's great.
Another example was when they had these QR codes for restaurants and stuff like that. I just had no desire to go to the places that were going to enforce that, because that's humiliating. Showing that you have, like, this QR code on your cell phone to get into a restaurant, that, like, it's an insult.
I'm not even going back to places that, like, had a requirement or put that sign up, or there were places that, like, made announcements saying, starting from tomorrow, you will only be allowed in if you present your QR code. It's like, okay, well, I'm just not ever going back to this establishment.
Yeah, but then, like, my friends and we found these alternative locations where we could meet, we could have drinks, have dinner, and stuff like that. And then, like, either it was a location that wouldn't enforce it, and then we now, like, respect the staff a lot more, and we feel like they're on our side, or we would set one up of our own, and it was so much more fun. I found, like, these meetings were actually, like, were a lot more fun than they were prior, because, like, you feel like you're kind of fighting back in your own way by just, like, getting together and having a couple of drinks.
It's like real life dissident. It's like a real life. I wish I could have experienced that. Where I live was really, really just full of sheep. Like, and I wonder, what do you think about this? I wonder if in places like where I live, maybe places like Russia, I don't know, because St. Petersburg is a big city, but I wonder if there's a linguistic reason why it was so difficult to find other people who were aware of the either the lies, the misrepresentations, the nefarious agenda. Like it just seemed really like if you didn't speak English, you were behind the curve. Because I would see stuff in English, in like English alternative media. I would see doctors who speak English raising the alarm, speaking out at great risk. And then like I would translate that into Spanish so that people in my sphere could understand what I'm talking about when I say, this isn't what you all think. And then like that news, that doctor speaking out, or that English alternative media, or not even always alternative media, like sometimes pretty mainstream, it would just never come to Spain. That headline, that revelation just wouldn't come to Spain. Or when it did, it was very late in the day. It was almost like old news. It doesn't have any relevance anymore. And yeah, I did find, over the course of the 2 years, lots of Spanish alternative media, Spanish social media accounts on Twitter or whatever. But as far as like reaching the normies, it was really difficult. And I had a sense from time to time that if only these people spoke English, they could be getting some of this information a lot sooner. And it would be easier to find people who were kind of like on my same page that I could, seek community with and support from. But everyone was just, watching the television and getting their news from the television and had no idea that there was actually other information out there.
Yeah, that's a double-edged sword. Like I've actually thought about this linguistics question before, not only with the pandemic, but with many other issues. It's that basically English is the language of global homo. So all of the worst things are going to be broadcast to the world in English. So unfortunately, like the worst shit libs you'll meet in these non-English speaking countries will probably be really good at the language, but will actually be really proficient English speakers. However, at the same time, the response to global homo, the pushback is also in English. So all of like our content is like, I know there's right wingers who make content in other languages, but like the bulk of it and all the best stuff and all this stuff that is really like pressing and really like understands the issues of the day. Not that I maybe that sounded a bit disrespectful to those other content creators. I don't mean.
I think you're right, because I pay attention to like what's going on in Italy, what's going on in Spain, France even. I try to follow it on a platform, or I've even spoken to some people who do IRL activism, and I even said that continental Europe, as far as in real life activism, is, I think, does a lot better than the Anglosphere nationalist side, or even Eastern Europe is like streets ahead of the Anglosphere when it comes to IRL activism and organization. But it's just something about the information wasn't getting to people in Spanish. I don't know. It was just something that I had this real sensation of like, man, it's out there, but it's all in English. I had to translate so much stuff because like even the doctors, like and I don't want to hear any conspiracy stuff or like, oh, it's just a puppet, but like Michael Yeadon or that Malone guy, the stuff they were saying about the needles and everything, whether their control of position or whatever, the stuff they were saying was worth listening to, and very important as far as like what decision you want to take. And that was only in English. I had to translate what they were saying and talk to my Spanish friends and acquaintances and my girlfriend stuff. And actually, I kind of suffered in the end for that, because a lot of my friends now don't talk to me because I'm a negacionista and a facha. So I kind of lost a lot of friends over the past 2 years, but people also did take what I was saying to heart and made good decisions. So that's enough for me.
Yeah. So like the linguistics things, one thing I've actually noticed is that in Russia, the worst, like the most liberal people, like the worst, like shit libs, they're all like proficient at speaking English. But then also the most base people are, unless like I just don't know about them. But I mean, it is St. Petersburg, so I know it's not representative of the entire country, but the people that I can best explain these issues to, and I speak Russian at a decent level, but not great. But even like just on a level that someone would actually like be informed on these issues, it's definitely a thing, because global homo, it operates in English, but then the response to it is also generally in English as well. I'd say that the reason that Russia was better, was a lot less a lot better a place to be during the pandemic, is because people just generally have this like distrust of media and authority and stuff like that, and they just like are a lot less compliant. And also the country's like has this history of corruption, which, you know, in the past that would have been a bad thing, but today when it's some kind of tyranny that's trying to be enforced, it's also they're worse at enforcing the tyranny, you know. About the tyranny from the pandemic, they were a lot worse.
Russia's so big too, and I imagine in the places where it's like really rural and wild and empty, you know, it would have been easy to just keep going about your life like nothing was going on.
Yeah. So like I even introduced people to some like phrases, like the phrase speakeasy. I explained to them like the history of what a speakeasy is from
Nice.
the Prohibition era, and about how this is going to be our modern day speakeasy. And we actually had this bar that like I would call this. We're going to the speakeasy today.
That's very cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, like this, you know, all this like tyranny though. It actually like kind of it was kind of actually fun in a way to like to get around it. And I, you know, I don't want it to be like this thing that like, well, we're finally doing something, but you know, it's a good way to keep yourself.
That's the why thing. That's what I was talking about earlier. Like, I'll be honest, if I had a similar situation where like I was in contact with a group of acquaintances or friends who, you know, instead of rejecting me out of hand and then never speaking to me again, actually like sympathized with what I was saying and understood, and then we did our own little, you know, secret speakeasy type thing or whatever, or we disobeyed together, like they could have put me in jail for 48 hours. I wouldn't have cared because I had a why. Like, no, I'm doing this and I've got support. And no, you can't control, like we had curfews here, you know. So like, yeah, I think that's the whole thing. Like, you know, I actually would have been happy to violate curfew, you know, with a group of friends and fuck the consequences because I have a why. You know, I want to dissent.
Yeah, and I, you know, I find that like is a lot better than the stuff that's like way too abstract. Like I find that maybe on the dissident right, sometimes we get into too many abstractions. Like I'm fighting for Western civilization or my people and stuff. And I'm not saying that stuff's not important. Of course it is, but it can be like so abstract that it's not something you actually like see in your present day, in your day-to-day life. You know, because if your ideal is something that's like so huge and abstract like that, it's easy to kind of just fall into that kind of pit of despair that we were talking about earlier. But then when it's actually things that, you know, you can see in your day-to-day life, like, you know, actually having a real community and stuff like that, actually having real friends that you care about, and having these projects, you know, that you're doing. Maybe you're working on a homestead, maybe you're starting a business, things like that. Like that, it puts it into a perspective where the stuff that that you say you're fighting for, and the stuff you say you care about, it's a lot more. It gives you a lot stronger motivation because it's something that you see in your day-to-day life. It's not something that, you know, I feel like, you know, even with myself, maybe back in like say 2018, when I was kind of some guy working some dead-end job in Toronto and stuff, I already had like taken in all these ideas. I had like internalized it all, but then like it was still kind of something that was like in the abstract, when, you know, it wasn't really something that like I felt in my day-to-day life. When today I feel like I've actually been able to I've been able to actually find certain things like I just mentioned that actually do give you that motivation. You know, I don't think it's about you know, writing the 14 words on Twitter or something like that, or it's about the small things that actually matter to you in your life. I think Jared Taylor put it well once. He said that like a lot of young guys have said to him that, oh, well, I'll die for the white race. But he said, well, will you work for it? Because then in many ways, people will say like, oh, I'll die for this. Well, I mean, and that sounds like a lot more dramatic of a statement, but it really isn't, when that's something that's like, not going to be made. That's not something that's happening to you right now. And B, it's like, it's setting like it's so high that it basically excuses everything below that, when it really is a lot more. You know, we don't need people who say like, oh, I'm a great warrior and I'm going to go out and die for this. No, you need people who are going to do the small things, which are not quite so heroic, not quite so dramatic, but those things are actually, those small things are what are going to make the difference.
This is reminding me of something. Maybe you've seen it too. It was the other day I just saw this, that there was some scientific study evaluation of like right-wing brains, people who are right-wing and how their brain works, and left-wing brains, how their brain works. And it was really interesting because apparently, according to the results, people who have more right-wing tendencies do see things as a big picture, and it's difficult for them to see the small, minute details. And I definitely relate to that. And one of the things that kind of frustrates me living in clown world or normie world or the Kali Yuga is that I can't seem to get people to see the big picture like I do and even care about it. Everyone just cares about what affects them. I've had people ask me, I was going to say my real name there, which I don't care, whatever. But I've had people say to me, like, why do you care about the dinghy riders? Why do you care about the people washing up on the boats all the time? Why do you care? It's not happening here. And I just like, I have a response to that, and I explain, but I'm always taken aback. It's like, how can you even have that mindset where, if it's not happening here, it's not happening at all, and it's no big deal. But of course it does affect us anyway. And there's, even if it's not happening in your own, backyard, you still have a reason to oppose it. You're still justified in opposing it. But I think that the negative side is that we do, especially in very right-wing spheres, very dissident right-wing spheres, get this overly big picture thing, like you were saying. We'll die for the cause, but we won't work for it. We won't do the small detail things that keep it going, that keep the cause going. So yeah, I think this is about, it depends on your disposition. And, depending on your mentality, some things will be easier for you to get through and other things will be really difficult, and you'll have to work on that. And I do think that something that the right can work on is, the nitty gritty, small details, small steps type things, because the big picture, we've got it, but it's also a bit overwhelming and some of it is out of our hands. So yeah, I definitely see what you're saying there with like the big picture thing and the small practical steps difference as well, for sure.
And yeah, I do think for a lot of people, like, mindset is going to be what gets you through or not. Like, I think that basically the way the world's going, not only the right, but just everyone really, even the normies, like the mainstream will destroy people. And, the comfortable way of life that has been built up over the past several decades, that's not going to last very long. And it will be the people who are able to cope with it. I mean, like in Europe this winter, they might be facing cold, like a cold that they've never experienced before. It's going to be how you're able to cope with it that gets you through it. I just want to read it. I was just going to read a super chat that I got toward the end. It says, the age of Stoics followed age of heroes after Greek comedies ended of heroes by relentlessly mocking and ridiculing heroic spirit and sacrificing and sacrifice as foolishly throwing one's life away. Heroism is needed, romantic, fiery passion, and not dignified resignation. Well, I'll let you respond to that as well. But what I'll say is yes and no. Yes, heroism is needed, passion is needed, but at the same time, we do need to also be able to live through clown world, and it won't be you heroically slaying the villains. It'll be like you doing the things that you can in your life to actually overcome it.
Yeah, my response to that is that I think that's a small pixel perception of Stoicism, and I would encourage that commentator to do a bit more investigation into it. And I don't say that in a condescending way, but Stoicism, according to the original practitioners of that school of philosophy, it was actually about being your best self. And that sounds like a corny phrase today, but it actually is a phrase that is over 2,000 years old. And it was about living as the best version of yourself, and talking about heroism, like conquering the weaknesses inside of you, and not resigning, definitely not being dignified resigning. No, it's more about like finding the ability to deal with what you can and then doing it, even if it's difficult, doing it, but then not wasting energy and neurons and even your life on things that you can't do anything about. And as far as heroism and passion, I agree. I'm a pretty passionate guy, but my passions have gotten me into a lot of trouble too. And there are times where I wish I would have kept a cooler head instead of being dictated to or governed by my passions. So I think I understand like the frustration, obviously, that commentator has, because looking at what's going on, we need some heroism. That would be nice if we had some heroes and some passionate, champions to take up our cause. But we also have to be clever about the situation. And when the situation really isn't in your hands, you're not gonna feel very good about yourself if you say, "Oh, I should be this passionate hero," but you can't be. You can't be. So you're gonna end up, having this sort of crushing demoralization. Whereas if you take the Stoic path, and not like the hippie version or the modern version, which is a bit, inaccurate or watered down, but the original Stoics believed in, in improving yourself, carving yourself out of the marble, and the problems often are bigger in your own head. So you have to calm down those voices, those voices that are saying that the end is nigh, the sky is falling, there's all these problems. Are they though? Are they, or are you just making them bigger in your own head? And in fact, if you just calm down and worked on controlling those passions and accepted the realities of the situation and what you can do in that situation, you might feel a lot better.
Yeah, and I guess we're getting towards the end here. I guess I'll end up by bringing it back to the analogy of the military officer. If he's in a battle and his best friend for years and years gets his head blown off by artillery fire, I mean, of course, it's a horrible thing to experience, but he still has a battle to win. So you still gotta keep your head in the game. But anyway, so we're headed towards the end. Was there anything you wanted to add before we finished?
No, I've just been perusing the comments. Someone asked, is nationalism even alive in Europe? I would say yes, actually, it's quite alive. Even in Western Europe. In Eastern Europe, it's quite healthy. But even in Western Europe, there are, like here in Spain, there's various nationalist organizations, even sort of mainstream political parties, which I don't put too much stock in. But we've got Vox, which does quite well, or was doing quite well in the past. In Italy, we've had Lega and Fratelli d'Italia. And then apart from that, there's like more like social activist groups, organizations. They're not electable parties, but like Casa Pound in Italy is one, Bastion Frontal in Spain. These are just ones that I'm naming off the top of my head in the countries that I know of better than other countries. So yeah, like don't get demoralized about the state of Europe, and as far as like nationalist organizations. I know it's tough. Like Casa Pound, right now the prefect of Rome is trying to implement this policy which specifically targets Casa Pound. So yeah, the fight is real and constant, but we do have organizations that do exist. We haven't all gone extinct. I say we.
Oh, hello. You muted yourself there. I didn't hear you.
My microphone just like completely let it disconnect. Hold on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just saying, I won't say we. I'm not a member of those groups, but they definitely do exist. And yeah, like this is a war. We're in a war. It's an information war. It's a physical war at times, and you just gotta keep fighting.
All right, so that's been Pox Populi. I think this has been a great stream, and keep an eye out for my content. I'll be trying to get out a video next week, and then the big one that I've been working on for a long time. I hope to have that out sometime next month. So, and I think within the next couple of weeks, Morgoth and I will probably be doing another classic movie stream. So that'll be on his channel. All right, so thanks for coming on, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
All right, good night, everyone.